We need to talk about this phone. You know that whole Tech-tember, Tech-Toptober, whatever it's called, that period where the iPhone comes out and then we get new Macs and we get some Pixel devices and we get loads of other stuff. That is crazy times for tech reviewers like myself. It's just the maddest and most exciting part of the year. I'm filming this in March and it feels exactly the same. There's so much stuff coming out at the moment. It's frightening. And it also explains the bags underneath my eyes. So apologies. In fact, I won't apologize about being tired because it comes with the job. And I love this job. Right, the Pixel 10a. This has just been launched by Google. That's the 9a and that's the 10a. And apart from the colour, there aren't that many differences. And because of that, it's easy to suggest that Google just hasn't bothered with this one. They've just thrown out this as a mild update and thought, there you go, you can have that. I think that's unfair if you're thinking that way, because there's 3 good pieces of news about this phone. Before I get to that, let's just go through the basics of the 10a and what you need to know about it. This could be one of the easiest smartphone reviews I've ever done. And for that, Google, I thank you. Now, before I get started, a very quick mention about my newsletter. If you haven't joined it yet, it comes out every week and it features content that doesn't end up on this channel and giveaways and all sorts of subscriber exclusive stuff. And it's completely free. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe and no hard feelings. Right, let's get into this. Let's start with the design, which in this case is incredibly pink. I think this is the berry colour, but there's also obsidian, fog and lavender. Those colours are a little bit more muted than this one. This is very much in your face and I really like it. I don't think I'd buy a phone in this colour. I tend to go for cosmic orange or just the blacks and the whites. I don't tend to go for really brash colours with my phones, but there's something about this, and this probably doesn't do it justice on the camera, but it's a very attractive colour. However, the colour isn't the main thing that Google's talking about with this. The thing they're talking about the most is the fact that the camera bump is now flush with the rest of the rear of the phone. On the 10, is this the 10? I've got so many Google phones in front of me. But on this more flagship Pixel device, we have a big camera bump, which sticks out like most other phones. The 9a sticks out a tiny bit. The 10a doesn't stick out at all. There is no camera bump. It just does not exist. And that means no table wobble. Although, to be honest, the 10 doesn't wobble either. Now, I know that people aren't keen on phones that wobble too much without cases on. Cases do tend to fix the wobble. But if you go caseless, and with this, I'd suggest you do, there's not an ounce of wobble. There are some lovely cases, by the way, if you go for the official Google case. It's not the same colour as the berry phone. They're actually quite different, but it's a nice case nonetheless. But Google is making quite a big deal about this flush rear camera, and I get it. I think we've got to a point now with a lot of phones where the camera bump is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I reviewed the Xiaomi 17 Ultra last week and it's huge. It's the biggest camera bump ever, and that's because it's a camera phone. That's its main job, really. The main job of this isn't just a camera phone. It has to be everything to the person that buys it, and it's a cheap-ish entry-level budget, whatever you want to call it. It's an entry-level phone from Google, and because of that, it just needs to get things done. And if one of those things is just being satisfyingly chunky and unwobbleable, happy days. There are some giveaways that it's the budget phone. So for instance, if I turn the screen on, these massive bezels around the screen. Does that matter? Probably not. Most people who go for the Pixel A series are coming from an A series Pixel, so that they'll be used to these big bezels. You only notice that if you're me. If you're a tech reviewer who goes from really expensive and flagship smartphones with very tiny or almost non-existent bezels to this, it does grate a little bit, but I think for most people buying this phone, they won't care at all. It's got a fantastic display. It's very bright. It's 120 hertz. It's got, I nearly said Face ID. It's got both, I nearly said Touch ID as well. It's got fingerprint recognition, but it's also got face recognition as well. It's got everything going for it. It's very bright as well. It's much brighter than before. It's 3000 nits. The previous generation was 2700 nits, so there is a 300 nit difference, which it does improve the display considerably when you're using it out in bright sunlight. And particularly if you're coming from an older Pixel, you're going to notice a big difference with that. And there's a theme there, which I'll come on to later. But design-wise, I really like this phone. And it's small, it's not huge. There's something about it. It's creeping into iPhone 13 mini territory. That is all I'm going to say on the design. Let's talk about camera. The camera system on the 10A is exactly the same as the camera system on the 9A, so you have the same sensors, you have the same lenses, both on the front and the back of the phone. The only thing that's changed, and this is quite often the case with generational changes for the Pixel lineup, the software. So you get some AI stuff on the 10A that you don't get on the 9A. Principally, you get the camera coach, which is this very clever use of AI. It's AI that I can get on board with because it's actually useful for a lot of people. It does what it says on the tin. It coaches you through taking a photo, framing it, moving backwards, forwards, choosing different focal lengths. In theory, it can help you become a better photographer. It's not something I'd use myself, but it's nice to have it there, and it's one of those features that's been taken from the more expensive 10 series and brought down to the A series. And it's a Pixel, and I love Pixel photography. I've never been backwards in coming forward about this. I love what these phones do to images. They're very dramatic, they're very contrasty. Yes, they're quite over sharpened, and it's not for everyone, but I'm fairly convinced that Pixel photography has definitely, I'm sure of this, influenced other Android phones on the market. You get that same kind of look from a lot of other phones, and I think Pixel started it. I'd love to know what you think about these photos I took in Barcelona this week. I'm a big fan of what this thing can do with its camera system, and given the price, which I will get to in a moment, that's a good thing. And you get the ultra wide that you don't get on the iPhone 16e or now the iPhone 17e. That's a big plus from my point of view. The only slight downside is the zoom. So we get 1 and 2 times zoom on here. 2 times isn't optical, it is digital. And it only goes up to 8 times zoom, which is, for this price point, standard fare, but it's not great beyond 2. You do get some AI assistance with all this stuff, and Google is the best at raising the quality of those images that you're zooming into, but I wouldn't get this phone if you want top notch. In fact, you wouldn't. Again, it comes down to who's buying this phone. I don't think the people who are buying the A series worry too. They just don't worry about that sort of thing. They zoom in with their fingers and take a photo and they're happy, which is absolutely fine. Okay, performance. So this phone has the G4 chip, which is Google's own Tensor brand. That's the same chip that's in the 9A, so there's no difference. It has the same amount of RAM, 8 gigabytes, the same storage options. Again, it's the exact same phone as this internally. It's no different. So that means that performance-wise, the benchmarking and stuff that other people will do, I don't do that, I do not care. But the benchmarking stuff that people will do, I think will prove that it's no different. I don't think you'll get anything more out of it. But again, a little bit like the camera system, does that matter for the people that are buying this? I don't think it does. This feels incredibly fluid, fast. For me, over the last week or so, it hasn't slowed down. It's just absolutely fine. I've not soak tested it. I've not used it for months and months and months. But the fact it's backed up by 7 years of OS and security updates suggests that Google is fairly confident this thing is going to last. The battery, that hasn't changed either. That's exactly the same as well, but it's really good. And like most Android phones, the standby time is ridiculous. It goes on and on and on. It does have faster wireless charging, which is nice. So it's gone from 23 watt wired to 30 watt wired, and from 7.5 watt wireless to 10 watt wireless. Not massive jumps, but that wired upgrade is actually quite significant, I think, when it comes to how quickly you can juice this thing up. So that's good. Oh, the other thing, AirDrop. If you've got a MacBook, for instance, you can send files, photos, videos, whatever you like, from this via QuickShare to your MacBook via AirDrop. It just works. And that means if you're tempted to switch from the iPhone to the Pixel, it just works. And it makes that transition really easy. The one thing I haven't mentioned is the price. This starts at $499, which is what the 9A started at. So a bit like Apple not doing anything with the price on the 17E, it's the same price as the 16E. Google has done the same thing. And this is during a period where smartphone pricing is creeping up. We've seen this with quite a few flagships and mid-range devices where components are getting more and more expensive for the manufacturers. are pushing up the price for consumers. Google has stuck by the $499 entry price for this, and that's very, very good news. And I think for that price, you're getting a lot for your money. Now onto the 3 pieces of good news about the 10A. Number 1, if you're coming from a very old Pixel, like for instance the 4A, which was my first ever Pixel phone, loved it, it's fantastic. Maybe you're coming from that, maybe you're coming from this one, I can't remember which one that is. Was that the 5 or the 6? I can't remember. Anyway, if you're coming from an older Pixel A series device like one of these, this is a massive upgrade. The camera, the display, the build quality, the berry color, it's huge. And I think it's fairly obvious that Google is angling for these users. They're not looking for people to come from the 9A to the 10A. That makes no sense whatsoever. Why would you do that? But the older devices, good news. The second piece of very good news is that if you are looking for the purest Android experience from a very, very budget phone, although it's not as budget as some, I get the fact you can get cheaper Android phones, but if you want the lock, stock and 2 smoking barrels Android version from Google, this is the best example of it at this price point. And the third piece of good news is that the Pixel 9A is now an absolute bargain. If you're not bothered about getting the latest and greatest or this berry color, just get this. And given the fact that this is basically the same phone as this, less the things that I talked about earlier, and also things like satellite SOS that you don't get on here, you don't get the Gorilla Glass 7i. If you're not bothered about that stuff, this is an absolute bargain. Now guys, it's over to you. Let me know if you're going to get the 10A or if you're going to get something else and why. And remember, hit subscribe both on this channel if you haven't done, but also the newsletter. There's a link down below. I'll see you down there.